All right, Brazil, Russia, India, China. Yes, we know by any measure, the BRIC nations, they had a banner year, indeed a banner decade. The year's results for Russia, well, 129% gain. So what's going to happen in 2010? All right, we've got Uri Landesman. He is an expert on investing in emerging markets. He is the head of global growth at ING Investment Management. Uri, good to have you with us. I know you didn't bring your crystal ball, so nothing is for sure. But let me ask you, what's going on in Brazil? Are we just going to have a repeat, do you think, of 2009 in Brazil?
I think it'd be difficult to have as good a year in 2010 as we had in 2009. Say a couple of things about Brazil. Obviously, as we know, it's a very resource-dependent market. And so, to some extent, as go oil prices, metal prices, so goes the Bovespa. Short term, I think Brazil might be in for a little bit of a correction. I'm actually the least sanguine about Brazil of the four BRICS markets for 2010, primarily because of the downside risk. Well, I think there might be as much upside potential in Brazil as in the other three. I see a little bit more downside, and therefore the risk-adjusted return expectation for 2010 might actually be lowest in Brazil this year.
But is this like a self-fulfilling prophecy? I mean, okay, I know they're going to have elections, and you mentioned the commodity risk, and also they've been trying to cool off all of this interest in the Brazilian real by imposing a tax on foreign investments there. But, I mean, is it possible that the domestic economy really fulfills everybody's expectations?
Yeah, I'm still very bullish on the domestic economy, particularly in the intermediate and longer term. I think that the establishment of the middle class in Brazil is one of the really strong, lasting, and underappreciated stories out there in all of global investing. Short term, however, I'm very concerned when reasonably inexperienced governments try to cool down economies. We saw China have difficulty with it in 2008. We'll get to China later on, but that's sort of one of the questions for China then. I tend to get a little nervous when, like I said, not necessarily the most sophisticated governments in the world start dealing with trying to cool things off. They generally cool a little too hard, and then it takes the countries a little while to come back. So I believe that Brazil probably will be a better performer in the second half of 2010 than in the first.
Do you ever go through the mental process, though, where you're a little, I'm not saying that you're bearish on what's going on in Brazil, but because you have this caution, you wouldn't be surprised if indeed the caution didn't turn out to be true, that the market kind of continue to zoom?
Absolutely. I mean, I think I'm a secular bull on emerging markets and on Brazil. I'm just looking at I don't know, a 25% chance that there's a 20% correction. And because of that, when I weight that in, I have a slightly lower expectation for Brazil than some of the other BRICS markets.
If you did get that correction, let's say in Brazil, would then you add more to the position?
I'd be a huge buyer at that point.
Really? So you're going to wait a little bit, maybe put some more money to work
Absolutely.
After that happens. Tell me about what's going on in China. I've heard some talk about, bubbles, asset bubbles there because of all the government stimulus. Is that real?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there definitely is an opportunity there for some asset bubbles to burst short term. The government there tends to act very decisively, so that's positive in the terms of what's going on. I'm hoping what they learned from 2008 is that it is such an aircraft carrier of an economy right now that when you stop it, getting it started again isn't so simple. And as we remember, we talked in 2008 about how long it took that economy to get restarted. Hopefully they learned. They'll cool on a measured basis and not have panic selling. But China, all of these emerging markets, but especially China and India, tend to be very, very volatile, and also a little nervous about China in the first half that a less than smooth cooling effect could create a short-term panic in that market. Don't see as much potential downside there as in Brazil, but it's my second least favorite of the BRICS.
All right, now if you do get the correction in China, are you also buying there?
Absolutely. I am a real secular believer that the growth prospects in emerging markets longer term are better than in the emerged markets. And so while I actually think that the United States might be one of the better performing markets in the world in 2010, longer term, I'm definitely over a cycle going to be net long emerging markets.
Are there going to be any signals that we need to watch in Brazil and China, other than, let's say, a drop in the markets? Are there anything that would telegraph a movement?
Again, I think big rallies in the currency would be very worrying. real slowdowns in lending, in bank lending. That's certainly something that China often does, is they try to get the banks to stop lending. That is a tricky wicket, as we say, and can work against you when you try to restart things. Those are some of the factors that I'm going to be looking at.